I had been living in my apartment peacefully for years before I decided to take in a roommate. At first, it seemed like a great idea, help with the rent, some company, and maybe even a new friend. That was before I met Kevin. Kevin was a nightmare wrapped in human skin. He played loud music at all hours, left dirty dishes stacked high in the sink, and had an ever-rotating cast of equally rowdy friends who treated the apartment like a frat house. It was as if he had made it his mission to single-handedly destroy every semblance of peace in my home. One night, I came home to find a hole in the wall that hadn't been there that morning. Kevin, sprawled across the couch with a beer in hand, waved me off when I asked about it. "Dude, don't worry. I know a guy who can fix it cheap," he slurred. I clenched my jaw and nodded, pretending to let it go. The truth was, I wasn't just some random tenant. I was the owner of this apartment, and Kevin had no idea. I had kept that little detail to myself when he moved in. It wasn't out of malice, but I wanted to see how he'd treat the place when he thought he was just another renter. And let's just say, his behavior was eye-opening. It wasn't just the noise and the mess, Kevin's complete disregard for boundaries was mind-boggling. He left the front door unlocked constantly, inviting whoever felt like crashing on our couch. More than once, I'd woken up to find a stranger passed out in the living room, surrounded by crushed beer cans and half-eaten pizza slices. My patience was wearing thin, but Kevin had no idea. He probably thought I was just another pushover roommate, someone who would either clean up after him or tolerate his nonsense. One particularly bad night, I arrived home to find the kitchen an absolute disaster zone. Plates with congealed sauce sat in the sink, beer bottles rolled on the floor, and the unmistakable stench of stale alcohol mixed with something burnt lingered in the air. Kevin wasn't home, but judging by the overturned chairs, he and his friends had left in a hurry. That was the final straw. I took out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found my lawyer's number. It was time to remind Kevin that leases worked both ways. I wasn't going to confront him just yet, I wanted to make sure I had my ducks in a row first. The next morning, I woke up to blaring music, as usual. Kevin was sitting at the kitchen table, looking proud of himself as he scrolled through his phone, completely oblivious to the mess around him. "Hey man, you gotta try these energy drinks I found," he said, tossing me a can. "They'll keep you up for, like, 2 days straight." I didn't bother answering. Instead, I grabbed a trash bag and started cleaning up, not because I cared about tidiness at this point, but because I was documenting every bit of damage. I took photos of the hole in the wall, the broken cabinet hinge, the burn mark on the counter. I even snapped a picture of a cigarette burn on the couch. Kevin glanced up from his phone. "Dude, relax. It's not like this is your place or anything." That was it. That was the moment. I turned to him, letting the words settle before I spoke. "Actually, Kevin, it is my place. I own this apartment. And you, my friend, are officially on borrowed time." His face twisted into confusion, then disbelief. He let out a forced laugh, but the unease in his eyes was unmistakable. "Yeah, right. You're messing with me." "Nope." I pulled out my lease agreement, highlighting my name at the top. "And if I were you, I'd start packing." He stared at the paper, then at me. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in. For the first time since he moved in, Kevin was speechless. That night, as I lay in bed, I listened to the silence. No blaring music, no rowdy laughter, no crashing sounds of who knows what being knocked over. Just silence. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. But Kevin wasn't going to go down without a fight. I knew that much. And I was ready for whatever came next. I half expected Kevin to start packing his things immediately, but of course, that would have been too easy. Instead, he sulked for the first few days, acting like a wounded animal. He gave me the silent treatment, which, honestly, was a welcome change from his usual loud and obnoxious behavior. But then, things started getting petty. First, it was little things. My coffee mysteriously vanished from the pantry. My favorite mug was found shattered in the sink. The Wi-Fi mysteriously stopped working whenever I was home, yet Kevin and his friends seemed to have no issue streaming their endless gaming sessions. I knew exactly what was happening. Kevin was trying to make my life as miserable as possible before he left. Then came the more blatant sabotage. One evening, I found the thermostat cranked up to 85 degrees, making the apartment feel like a sauna. Another time, I came home to find my room had been rearranged, my bed pushed to the other side, my desk cluttered with random junk. It was as if Kevin was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was losing my mind. I was ready to tolerate some minor antics if it meant getting rid of him quietly, but he crossed the line when I came home one night to find my bedroom door wide open, despite the fact that I always locked it. My gut twisted as I stepped inside, quickly scanning the room. Sure enough, my drawers had been rifled through, my belongings disturbed. Nothing was missing, but the violation was clear. That was it. I had been patient. I had given him chances. But he had officially run out of time. I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer's number again. "Hey, I need that eviction paperwork finalized. Now." Kevin wanted to play games? Fine. But he had no idea just how much power I held in this situation. The moment Kevin received the eviction notice, his attitude shifted from petty annoyance to full-blown hostility. He stormed into the living room, waving the papers in the air. "You're really doing this? You're actually kicking me out?" "Yes, Kevin. It's called consequences," I replied, keeping my voice even. "You have 30 days. Make them count." Instead of accepting defeat, Kevin went nuclear. He blasted music louder than ever, left the refrigerator open for hours to spoil food, and even attempted to have a rager of a house party. That was the final straw. I called the cops that night and reported a disturbance. When they arrived, Kevin tried to play the victim, but the officer wasn't buying it. "Sir, your name isn't even on the lease. If the property owner wants you out, you have no choice." Kevin's face turned red with rage, but he had no comeback. His friends filtered out one by one, leaving him alone with the mess he created. But Kevin wasn't done. Over the next few days, he made every effort to get under my skin. He left passive-aggressive notes taped to my door, cranked up the heat to unbearable levels, and even tried to tamper with the plumbing, leaving the sink clogged for days. I documented everything, sending each infraction straight to my lawyer. Then, one night, I came home to find a notice slipped under my door. Kevin had filed a bogus complaint with the landlord, claiming I was harassing him. It was laughable. I calmly gathered my evidence, walked straight to my lawyer's office, and had him draft an official response with all the documentation proving otherwise. Kevin received a copy the next day. His face was priceless. He had officially lost the war. With just a week left before his eviction deadline, he tried to make amends, acting like nothing had happened. He offered to split groceries, started washing dishes, and even asked if we could talk things out. But I wasn't buying it. I told him I wanted him gone, and that was final. The last day of his lease arrived. Kevin took his sweet time moving out, glaring at me every step of the way. As he dragged his last box out the door, he turned and sneered, "You'll regret this." I simply smiled. "No, Kevin. You will." As the door shut behind him, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The apartment was mine again. And for the first time in months, it was finally home. With Kevin gone, I finally had my apartment back. The first night without him felt surreal, no unexpected guests, no booming bass shaking the walls, no unpleasant surprises waiting for me in the kitchen. Just peace. But peace didn't last long. The damage Kevin had done lingered, quite literally. The apartment reeked of stale beer and cigarette smoke, despite my best efforts to air it out. My bank account took a hit as I shelled out for repairs, patching up walls, replacing burned-out electrical fixtures, and deep cleaning the carpets to remove stains left behind by who knows what. And then there was the security deposit. Kevin, of course, had vanished like a ghost, conveniently avoiding my calls and texts when I asked about the damage he had caused. My lawyer advised me to take legal action, but the thought of dragging this mess out even longer exhausted me. So, I made a choice: I'd handle it myself. I spent the next few days meticulously documenting everything: receipts for repairs, photos of the damage, and screenshots of our conversations. Then, I did something Kevin never saw coming. I tracked him down. A few casual inquiries among our mutual acquaintances led me to his new place, a dingy apartment across town where he was crashing with another group of unsuspecting roommates. One afternoon, I paid him a visit. When Kevin opened the door and saw me standing there, his face went pale. "Oh, hey, man. What's up?" I handed him a folder. "This is what's up. You owe me for the damages. Pay up, or I take you to small claims court." Kevin laughed nervously. Come on, dude. You wouldn't actually do that, would you? It's just an apartment. I didn't smile. Try me. For the first time since I'd known him, Kevin looked genuinely nervous. He fumbled through excuses, but I wasn't having it. Finally, realizing I wasn't going to back down, he relented. Fine. I'll figure something out. You have a week, I said before turning and walking away. 1 week later, I received a Venmo payment from Kevin, not for the full amount, but enough to show he got the message. I decided to cut my losses. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about finally being free of him. With Kevin out of my life for good, I could finally move forward. I deep cleaned my apartment, repainted the walls, and even bought myself a new couch, one without cigarette burns. For the first time in months, my apartment truly felt like home again. With Kevin completely out of my life, I finally had time to focus on myself. The chaos he had left behind took weeks to fully erase, but every effort I made felt like reclaiming my space, my sanity, and my peace. Once the last remnants of his presence were gone, I treated myself to a long-overdue celebration. I invited a few close friends over for a quiet housewarming party, an event that had been impossible with Kevin around. We toasted to new beginnings, and as I looked around my clean, calm apartment, I realized how much had changed. But the experience had left me wiser. I decided I wouldn't rush into another roommate situation again. Instead, I embraced the quiet, the ability to control my own space, and the sheer joy of not worrying about someone else trashing my home. I also took a step further. I started attending tenant rights workshops, learning the legal side of renting, and eventually helped other tenants facing similar nightmares with terrible roommates. My lawyer even joked that I could make a second career out of tenant advocacy. Months later, as I sat on my balcony sipping coffee, I reflected on how far I had come. Kevin had been an absolute nightmare, but in the end, I had won. The experience made me more resilient, more cautious, and more appreciative of my own space. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was truly at home. And that, I realized, was worth every single struggle along the way. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched it to the end, don't forget to subscribe and have a nice day.